Now, this is a game that has sort of a weird localization issue going on, where it's that, isn't it, like Experience is localizing, or did anyway, the Xbox One version, but the PlayStation editions is from Nice
Yeah,
America. Adam, you're covering
yeah. So
Stranger of
first of
Sword
all, like
City.
the games we're talking about today are all pretty niche stuff that recently came out or is coming out soon. So yeah, I've actually finished Stranger of Sword City, which if you're not familiar with it, it's a dungeon crawler RPG. So it's kind of in the wizardry vein, first person crawling through dungeon class system, kind of with those D&D style like rules. But yeah, it was announced by Nice America a while back, and it was set to release in late March, and they were localizing the Vita version. And then after that, Experience, who is the Experience is the developer, they make a bunch of these dungeon crawler type games. They were self-publishing and localizing the Xbox One version, which is a little bit odd. And then those were set to come out on the same day, actually. So the Vita version by Nisa and the Xbox One version by Experience themselves. And then the Vita version was delayed a month. So the Xbox One version has been out a while now. Vita version doesn't come out until next a couple weeks from now, anyway.
Yeah, just to be clear, by the way, Andrea is covering the Xbox One version for us. Adam, of course, you're
Oh,
covering
I
the
didn't know
Vita
that.
version.
Well, if she needs any
Yes,
tips,
now you do.
I've beaten it. So anyway, so yeah, this is Experience's third localized game. The first one was Demon Gaze, which came out on Vita 2 years ago, and then they had Operation Abyss last year, and these were all localized by Nice America, and then Stranger of Sword City this year, and if you play Demon Gaze, even though this game looks like it visually looks nothing like it, it's got a very different art style, or at least one of the art styles. It feels like Demon Gaze in a different wrapper. Um,
Okay.
so what it is it's a dungeon crawler. So it's the type of game where you create your own party, you roll their own stats, and you can basically coordinate your party based on different classes, different races that have different bonuses to different stats. So you basically have full control over how you are going to, you know, how you're going to play the game and how you're going to strategize and all that. Um, so the premise of this game is that your character is from the real world. Um, is a normal high schooler, I think, and then you're on a plane, and then some weird phenomenon, explosion, crash thing happens, and then you end up in kind of this alternate world in a mysterious place called Sword City. And you're not the only.
This sounds familiar.
Mm.
Sorry.
I don't know what it sounds familiar to, but and you're not the only one. Seems like there's been a number of people that this has happened to, and they call these people strangers. So that's kind of the title, Stranger of Sword City. And yep,
Checks out.
Bunch of foreigners
yeah.
is what they are.
And then the story of this game, the narrative, it's not as narrative heavy as some of Experience's subtitles. It takes a back seat a lot of the time. But really, the general overall structure of the game is actually kind of SMT-ish in that there are three factions. There's kind of like the Strangers, and then there's Medell Company, and then there's I forget their name, but they're like the Royal Knights. And you ultimately kind of have to choose which one you want to support. And depending on which one you support, some of the party abilities you get are a little bit different. But it is kind of SMT light. It's not as law neutral chaos as those tend to be. But there is a little bit of a branching path thing that you get there.
So is the gameplay a lot similar to Demon Gaze, like that same vein? I mean, you covered Operation.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Abyss as
I
well.
played all these games.
Yeah, you covered all of them
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, thinking about it.
It's more similar to Demon Gaze. It's actually kind of funny because like some of the in-game icons and terminology are exactly the same, and it's kind of weird to see that because the art style. Let me just mention this quickly. There are two different art styles you can pick. One, the original art style it's a pretty artsy. It's not. It's hard to describe this, but it's not very like typical for Japanese games.
Very
it's like a
westernized kind of style.
kind of maybe like it reminds you of wizardry, but with
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about that.
and then
Very
they
classic.
in more recent versions of this game, which is what we're getting, they have an alternate art style that's more of a generic anime one, which to be honest I have no idea why you would ever pick that. But there's that option too. But anyways, it's kind of funny because you see these icons that if you play Demon Gaze, it looks so familiar. Like, wow, it's like for your different weapons and equipment, it's the same item names and everything. So it feels like it's Demon Gaze in a different wrapper.
Same like with the traps and things like that, like when you're actually walking around
Yeah,
in
so
the
it's a dungeon
environments.
crawler, so it's kind of Etrian Odyssey-ish in that you go into a dungeon, a location. It's first person, and you are kind of maneuvering around in first person with little map screen, grid by grid, that you're navigating through. And there are little
Yeah.
icons on the map that initiate battles. So it works in very much the same way. Unlike Etrian Odyssey, you don't have like FOEs, and you can't like put icons or notes on the map. It's just kind of more typical than that.
So are there still like random encounters when you explore the dungeon?
Not that many.
Like that's how
Yeah, you notice like a lot of these Japanese games don't really take advantage of the Vita screen that much. It's usually just like very small things. Like you can tap the mini map to make it bigger or something. It'd be kind of cool if you could draw on it, but that clearly doesn't.
that's one thing Etrian Odyssey does well is kind of drawing on the map, writing your own notes for like there's a trap here or there's a secret door here or whatever.
Healing
But
spot
this
or
one it
something,
just
yeah.
maps out as you walk across it. And it does have some of those conveniences. Like once you have mapped out a dungeon, if you need to go to a certain room, you can open up the map, click what spot you want to go to, and do like an auto travel, and then your guy like runs with kind of crazy speed to that point in the map automatically. So it's a couple of conveniences like that. Now, one of the awkward things about Demon Gaze that it did kind of uniquely, one of the few, was how you gained equipment. Rather than just like getting equipment from item drops from enemies, you go to certain places on the map. And this is Demon Gaze, not Stranger Sword City, but you go to certain places on the map and you kind of deposited gems that you picked up into a portal, and then you had a chance to pick up loot. I didn't really like how it was handled, but that's how it did it. So it was a little bit different. I don't think any other game kind of works quite like that. So if you wanted to get like a katana, you would take a katana gem, throw it into the portal, and then you had a chance of getting a katana. It could be a really, really nice one. It could have been a piece of junk. It was kind of...
So what's
okay.
what's like the variety of the different characters that you can add to your party? Because the good thing about like Demon Gaze was like there was tons and tons and tons of different portraits.
I'll get to that in a
use.
second. Stranger of Sword City,
Sure.
its equipment system, it once again feels like Demon Gaze in that you go to a certain point on the map, but instead of throwing a portal, what you do is you ambush an enemy. So it kind of initiates an encounter that honestly works basically just like any normal RPG battle, only at the end of the battle, you have a chance of getting a treasure chest and picking up an item. The one way in which it's kind of different is that it's which items show up is really even more random. So you don't have like a gem that you throw into a portal. You just kind of fight these battles, and you'll see like, oh, if I fight this battle, I'll get a bow, or if I fight this battle, I'll get a headgear. So it was if you're looking for trying to upgrade your equipment, you basically go to these ambush spots and kind of fight battles over and over again. And I kind of wish it was a little bit more intricate than that, but that's how it works.
Sounds like it's super grindy, but that's kind of what dungeon crawlers
it's a
are.
little bit grindy. Anyways, you asked about portraits. There are like more than 80 different portraits you can choose from.
Oh, jeez.
Of
Oh man.
a bunch of
Good Lord.
different, humans, elves, dwarves, the normal things, all these different, and that's both art styles included. So there's tons of different types of styles you can choose from. Some of them don't even seem to like mesh very well with the rest of the art in the game, with like the actual game characters. But you can choose whatever, and you can even choose your gender separate from your portrait.
That seems kind of
Okay.
odd. Like clearly a woman, but
you
playing this guy.
you can pick a character who's clearly female, and then have them whatever gender. Now,
Are those portraits separate from like you have 80 portraits for like the Western style, 80
No, they're
portraits
all
for the anime style, or is it
I
like
believe you
concept?
can like if you wanted to, you could play the game in the because I think the art style mostly goes for the in-game characters, not anything else like the monsters or anything like that. So it's the story characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe there are portraits in both art styles. So if you wanted to, you could have your in-game characters be in like the wizardry art style, and then have your character be like sticking out in this anime art style.
That's kind of fantastic. All right.
It's like I just showed up, literally a foreigner in this world.
Okay.
And so, like, does gender play a role in or is it just like the way the characters address
just the way
you?
the characters address you. I think it has some small bearing on some hidden stats, but otherwise nothing major. Now, the last thing I want to say about this game for now is that it's not an easy game.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, the difficulty ramp, because Demon Gaze was really hard after a while.
It had some really, really annoying bosses where,
Yeah.
first of all, I believe every boss in Demon Gaze like had a regeneration ability. So you had to...
Yes.
You can't just play it safe and like buff all your guys, and like, you can't... You actually had to like... In order to win, you had to do enough damage over time, and you couldn't. They would heal if you took too long, so you had to like do it quickly, and sometimes, lower your defenses to get that to work. And also, Demon Gaze had those demons, the tertiary little party members, and there's a lot of dependence on what they decided to do that you had no control over, which I felt was really annoying.
Right.
Did you play Demon Gaze? And do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of them was Mars, who was like the damage dealer.
Yeah.
And basically you just hope like, Mars, just do your strong attack. Just do the one that does the most damage. Do it every turn as much as you can. And sometimes they just stick around and do whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, you're just up to the mercy of the AI.
Now,
key spots.
Operation Abyss didn't have any of this, but Operation Abyss was a lot easier of a game. It was actually kind of pathetically easy. This one, I think, is a good compromise. In place of the demons, there's like these party skills that you get that you can activate. They're dependent on which faction you're supporting. And these are things like if you use this party skill, your hit stat and your avoid stat raise 10 points for the next 3 turns, which that's honestly like a really, really, really useful one in the way these wizardry games work.
So would it be like beneficial to have to build a party around a certain faction bonus in that game?
Well, maybe. Like, for instance, the Metal Company has some bonuses that increase defense. So, like, if you decided not to use, like, a knight character, maybe you would use these defense bonuses, like, if you wanted to use those skills all the time, those party skills. But otherwise, it's pretty flexible, I guess. But what I was going to say is that this game it can get pretty difficult. Certain boss battles are kind of difficulty spikes. Like, you might be going through a dungeon having no problems at all, and then at the end of it, you fight a boss and you get totally creamed. And there were a couple of places where I had to like just sit around for a bit and like, okay, I need to just get some new items, level up once or twice, and just kind of battle things in the dungeon, which isn't ideal because it kind of it's kind of a grind. But that's
a dungeon crawler. That's kind of the fun of it too.
You're supposed to be looting and getting better equipment and things like that. So if you just like go from beginning to end without stopping, you're not going to be equipped to take on some of these guys. So I did appreciate that. But however, the penalty for a character losing all their HP in this game is kind of crazy high. So how it works is if a character dies. Okay, I'll just state this as simply as I can, I think. So a character can have like 3 life points. So they have 1, 2, or 3 life points. And if they die, they'll lose one of them. If they die again, they'll lose the second one. And if they die a third time, they vanish and they're gone forever. It's permadeath.
Permanent.
And some characters don't have 3. They might have only 2 or maybe even only 1 life point maximum. It depends on their age.
Okay, interesting.
But anyways, so if you have a character and you're fighting a boss battle and then one of your character dies and you beat the boss, it's like, okay, that's fine. but they lost a life point, so they only have one instead of two or whatever. In order to get that life point back, you either have to pay an exorbitant amount of money, like it's literally like 80% of your cash, or you have to have them like sit out for a while. You take them out of your party, and
that's tough towards the end of the game.
You have a party of 6, and if you take a character out, you usually have 6 party members that coordinated well, that you've taken time to equip, and they work well together. The last thing you want to do is take one out for like 20 or 30 battles. What I ended up doing was, like, if I ever got to the point where a character died, I just reset. Like, I don't want to deal with this stupid penalty. I'll just try again. The penalty was
saves coming.
I was gonna say, like, couldn't you do something where it's like you had to put up with that, but then you go to like a low level dungeon and then just spend time there or something?
You could, I guess, but
yeah, that's the only way I could think of to avoid that and still continue on.
The idea of taking a party member out to like have them rest to get their life point back, and having to like slide in like a newbie character or whatever that you made, not only just mostly just the time that would take. I'll just reset and try the boss battle again. Now, I guess I should mention you can't save like in the dungeons. You can only save outside of them.
Oh, that's the worst. I need dungeon crawlers that save anytime I want them to.
And you get, kind of like most of these dungeon crawlers, you do get shortcuts and warp points and things like that. I think I've talked about this game long enough probably, but the last thing I'll say, I mentioned earlier how this story kind of takes a back seat for most of the game. What your main goal is during this game is that you're fighting, you're searching these various dungeons, and you're looking for these kind of like semi-boss demons. They're called lineage demons. They're actually very similar to the variants in Operation Abyss, and Demon Gaze probably had something similar as well. So, so you kind of just are navigating through these dungeons looking for these lineage bosses. So there's a lot of like what are effectively boss fights in the game. And then once you kind of collected enough of these, then you can kind of do like the next story segment and things like that. But while there are a handful of cutscenes throughout the game, well, not really cutscenes, like dialogue scenes, most of the time it's kind of navigating and looking for these bosses to kill. So it's a dungeon crawler.
Are there multiple endings?
There are different endings depending on which faction you took. I got the neutral ending, which is the ending where you
it's the best ending in any game.
I think that's kind of the obvious one. Like, you can either join up with the other strangers, or you can join up with these other factions. And like, well, I think the stranger is kind of like your own kind who are in the same predicament as your character. I don't know. That felt like the one to go for. I don't know how the other endings are.
All right, so that's Stranger of Sword City. Adam, you're gonna have a review up for that soon. All right, great. Okay, so that is out. That's already out, so you guys can pick it up on the Vita and the Xbox One.
I don't think it comes out.
Well, you said 2 weeks, right?
For Vita until like the end of April. It was delayed.
Oh, that's right. It got delayed. Okay, that's what I was thinking, because I was expecting it to both be out by now, because I think the embargo lifted a long time ago. So great. All right, thanks a lot, Adam, for your report about Stranger of Sword City.